Have you ever wondered why some people can eat whatever they want without gaining weight, and others seem to gain weight just by looking at food? In this video I'll explain why and what role your genes play in this. If you eat 2000 calories but you only burn 1500, you would have to gain weight corresponding to 500 calories. Sounds logical. However, the fact that some people eat many more calories than they need without gaining weight shows that this logic quickly reaches its limits. Especially since this effect only affects some people, it suggests a significant role of individual genes. Indeed, scientific studies have examined this very issue. Why do some people gain weight from certain calories and others do not? In this video, we dive deep into the research on obesity, calories, and strategies to lose weight. So pay close attention now. In 2003, a scientist conducted a fascinating experiment. And just for information, I'm simplifying the experiments in this video to make them more understandable, but the basic principle of the studies remains the same. So the scientist recruited 720 study participants to take part in his experiment. Participants were instructed to consume additional calories in the form of fat, in addition to what they already ate. And it won't surprise you what happened. People gain weight. But not so fast. Only some people gained weight, not everyone. The lucky ones did not gain weight despite the surplus of calories and maintained their body weight. But why is that? Why do only some people gain weight from fat and others do not? The scientists had a theory, namely that the FABP2 gene could be responsible. This gene has a particular function. When a person eats a high-fat meal, fat enters the intestine, and the intestine now thinks, great, I can make energy from this, build cell walls and so on, and starts absorbing the fat into the bloodstream. This continues for a while until suddenly the FABP2 gene activates. The function of the gene is to tell the intestine, thank you, but that's enough. And suddenly further fat absorption from the intestine is blocked, and the remaining fat stays in the intestine and eventually ends up in the toilet. This gene ensures that we only absorb as much fat as we need, and the rest simply passes through the intestine and is never absorbed. Calorie counting does not work here, as only some of the calories a person swallows end up in the bloodstream. So now we have the explanation for why some people in the study did not gain weight. They simply didn't absorb the excess fat they consumed because of their genes. But what about people who gained weight? The scientists found something interesting here, a genetic defect in the FABP2 gene. In these people, the fat ends up back in the intestine. However, the absorption regulation gene is defective and cannot fulfill its function. The body therefore lacks the signal, thank you, that's enough. And the consequence? The intestine eagerly absorbs all of the fat until it all ends up in the bloodstream. And the excess fat is stored as a precaution in the fat deposits for lean times. The person gains body weight. So you see, fat calories don't affect everyone the same way. But you might be wondering, there are other calories in the diet, what about carbohydrates? Another research team conducted a similar experiment to the fat absorption study, but this time with calories from carbohydrates. They gave 313 people more carbohydrates to eat and observed what happened. Again, there were people who gained weight as expected, but also people who did not gain weight despite the extra calories. This time, a different gene was responsible for determining whether people gained weight from carbohydrates or did not. Let's take another look at the process in the body. Carbohydrates enter the stomach and later are transported to the intestine. There they are absorbed into the bloodstream and are available to cells as fuel. This process is influenced by the ADRB2 gene. It's different from fat in this case. It doesn't block absorption, but rather the gene leads to carbohydrates being utilized and excess calories not being stored as fat. So the gene protects us from gaining weight due to too many carbohydrates. If the ADRB2 gene doesn't function properly, the situation changes. Carbohydrates still enter the body, but without the protective function of the gene, excess carbohydrate calories are stored as fat, and the person gains weight from too many carbohydrates. From these studies, we have learned that some people gain weight from fat but are protected against too many carbohydrates, while others are the exact opposite, gaining weight only from carbohydrates but being protected against too much fat. In fact, we already know of several genes in science that can influence sensitivity to fat or carbohydrates. Therefore, multiple levels in between can also be possible. By the way, there is a third calorie supplier, and that is protein. However, protein calories seem to have the same effect on all of us, and there are no known genetic differences. Therefore, when characterizing the type of diet, the individual differences between fat and carbohydrate sensitivity are crucial. How we react to fats or carbohydrates with our body weight is determined by our genes. Until we can repair our genes, we have no choice but to control our diet.